This is the process video for Tellurion 254. Had a few technical bumps, but was able to record enough that it was still worth making a video. So, here we go. As usual, starting with the thumbnail, and I start drawing right over top of that with line of action. And line of action is kind of like the story of the character, and everything else is just grammar. Just quoting Samantha Youssef again there, as I often do. So once the line of action's in place, and I do change it later, but it's a good place to start. It really is the core of the gesture. So I'll start blocking in shoulders and hips and rib cages, all the major masses, and here's really where the pose is mostly brought together. And so if the pose works at this stage, then I know it should hold throughout the drawing, and all the way till final. I'm really trying to just also preserve as much of the energy from the thumbnail sketch as possible. I just find at that scale, the thumbnail, if it reads at the thumbnail and I'm happy there, again, it like with the pose, I know it's going to read in the final image. So going through, and what I'm also doing here on top of trying to figure out the pose is to lay in a very basic skeleton that's going to help with my anatomy later. It's going to form the anchor for all of the actual muscle and skin and fat and all that great stuff. So you're doing trying to capture the expression. I'll do little doodles where it's a little bit more emotive, and then that helps me kind of plot it out. And so yeah, once we have the skeleton in place, it's really just a matter of knitting on and connecting all the muscles from their origin points to their insertion points. And like I was saying, once the pose works at the skeleton stage, it's kind of just a matter of execution. You can usually trust that, at least for the most part, for a first pass, the anatomy is going to work pretty well. So just going around and connecting all the dots. It really is almost like trying to think in 3D of, okay, where does this muscle start? Where does it end? And it's also trying to think, really at this stage too, about the facial expression. With Tellurion, it being a visual story, so much relies on these expressions to communicate, and it's been a really great exercise, but it's definitely I can't cheat. Yeah, so just going around making sure I've got everything blocked in. I've said before, this is a stage that often you don't see. It gets covered up by a lot of stuff, by the costume and accessories, and sometimes even architecture. But I just find that it helps me. Oh, right here, I flip the image, and I just in red there, I start to make adjustments to the anatomy that once you flip the image horizontally, once you mirror it, you really start to see where you were off. And so in red, I just kind of made all the corrections that I wanted to make. So that marks the end of my pencil layer, or the anatomy layer. Now it's on to the clothing. And so for me, again, I like I was just about to say, having the anatomy figured out underneath, even though you don't see it, it really helps for this stage of figuring out how all this clothing is going to hang off of the body, where it's going to wrinkle, where it's going to flow. I really admire people who can just go straight to drawing kind of the final thing. But for me, I just find I really enjoy and depend on the process. Just kind of going step by step. And here I'm just kind of checking my layers and making sure I'm figuring things out. And here are the technical difficulties. I thought I had pressed the button, and I did not press the button. But now you can see in the layers, I'm starting to assemble my light and shadow layers, all layers that are lit are in yellow, all layers that are in shadow are purple, and then I'm just starting to mask them out to kind of paint the either light or shadow depending on which direction I want to go. You can also see the lines, the kind of red perspective looking lines over top of the image are just trying to create a general guide of how the light is going to be striking everything. I kind of wanted to create the impression of some direction, even though it's kind of a more universal light scenario with a big light surface underneath them. So I went in first and just really blocked it in a very general way. That helps kind of get context, like doing a lighting sketch. And then I'm coming in and really taking time to figure out all the little details. I agonized quite a bit over the design of the shadows on the faces until finally coming up with what I settled on here. It's really trying to find that measure of just believability and readability in a lot of faces. Because the shadows have tended to distract more than help, I've often just oversimplified just to make them legible. But in this case, I wanted to try something, so I found a language for it that I was pretty happy with. But yeah, so it's another case of just going through and trying to think through all the details of where the light would hit, where the shadows would be cast. This is another great excuse, hopefully a great selling feature on why you should stick with your fundamentals. Doing value studies, even though all of Tellurion is cell shaded, thinking a great deal about form. And it's a hard line between light and dark, or lit and unlit, light and shadow. But knowing where to place that and how things are going to be cast, at least in a general way, is paramount. So still trying to do more and more studies on my own time of slightly more shaded and rendered material. So at this point, it's trying to figure out sort of the balance of forward and back, like trying to separate the layers with haze and add some color, add the color adjustments to it, just checking my layers to make sure I've got everything. And here is the final image, Tellurion 254. Thanks for watching. I have realized in putting this video together, and the last one really, but thinking about this one, it takes a while to actually edit this stuff. I'm still getting used to it, so I'm sure it'll go faster over time. But I am definitely not going to do this for everyone. I will, if I know an image that's going to be particularly good for this, I will make a habit of recording it. But yeah, it's each video kind of takes time away from another drawing being worked on. So for now, I want to stay mostly focused on that. However, if you have questions, if there's stuff you would like to know or things that you've always been curious about, please drop them in the comments. I will definitely reply to those if I can, and I may also be able to answer some of them in follow-up videos. So thanks a lot for watching.